While the discipline is beginning to take root in our inner life, and while we realize how we have always been deceived by our false expectations and our indulgent inertial drift, we can act to close other energy leaks in our field of consciousness. Actually, we can say that the closure of these leaks is still a containment, not a reassembly. However, this containment is very important for us because the progressive closing of our energy leaks implies freeing more and more energy to the benefit of our field of consciousness. Continuing in this methodical containment, we'll arrive having enough energy to attack frontally the most important and powerful causes of our disempowerment and our energy loss. But we could never get to face the gate of the desert without having gradually closed, one by one, all our energy dissipation through the support of discipline. As we have seen, the disempowering spiral is triggered by a thought image generated by the opponent in our surface mind. Thus, before going back to the source, in the meanwhile we can act into our inner selves to reduce at the minimum possible the energy losses caused by the disempowering spiral. To counter this loss, there are two powerful disciplines: the non-expression of negative emotions, the resurfacing of the deep mind. One of the opponent's primary goals is generating negative emotional energy, capable of paralyzing our good intentions, making us prey of any kind of emotional addiction, and transform our lives into a hell totally powered by unreal illusions. However, this outcome may effectively be achieved if and only if this emotional energy is expressed in an action that manifests it. If internally we perceive an emotion of anger and we transform this emotion in action, venting it against something or someone, we have taken the final step in the energy support of the opponent. Because, we could say, the opponent is greedy of the emotional short circuit generated by actions that manifest negative emotions. Do not express negative emotions, and therefore do not transform them into action, means introducing an element of detachment between our perception and the action. The negative emotion continues to exist, but we do not express it, basically because it was generated by a force that we are not, through tools that have been, let's say, usurped from us without us noticing it. But beware, not expressing a negative emotion does not mean denying it or pushing it in deep, because this would introduce an additional element of suffering in our field of consciousness. Not expressing a negative emotion means accepting it totally within us, letting it be everything it has to be, and burning it in the fire of our total attention. Means being totally present in front of it, without any backward step, but without turning it into action. Means observing what we perceive and realizing that our surface mind is interpreting an unpleasant bodily sensation, such as tingling or tightness in certain parts of the body, and is giving it a name associated with a series of actions, or rather reactions, to turn it off or push it back or in deep. Not expressing a negative emotion requires much energy, because normally what we do as unconscious human beings is exactly the opposite. It seems paradoxical, but human beings typically do not exhibit positive emotions and turn into action the negatives. It seems paradoxical, but it is not, because it's a precise tactic result. Yet, emotions are very, very important. All traditions of inner research show us tools aimed to develop and express them at their best. For example, in Kabbalistic language, emotions are called measures, since it is right through them that humans can measure themselves to realize how much they have really progressed on the path of the growth of consciousness. In the normal state, however, human beings come to produce emotions by the misuse of the surface mind for the only benefit of perpetuating the presence of the opponent within their field of consciousness. Do not express negative emotions can and must begin with small steps. There are big demons handled by the opponent within us, and it is crazy beginning the reconquest passing through them. Something simple enters our field of consciousness, shaking our views of the world, and generates a negative emotion: anger, contempt, oppression. Face the emotion that occurs. See how this emotion springs from a thought automatically generated by the surface mind. Look at the nature of this emotion, its taste, the purely physical sensations produced in the body. Look, let the emotion be, but don't manifest it into action. Do not vent the anger or contempt we feel against us or something else. Do not express our depression in actions that confirm it. Observe emotions, but do not express them, because none of all this is us. A negative emotion, intended as an emotion that dissipates energy, which is unbendingly observed without being fought, without being denied, without being expressed in a reactive manner, passes quickly and starts almost immediately to decrease in intensity. Then, with our inner being so cleaned up, if it will necessary an action to ensure that all of the excitement passes away entirely, we will act, but our action will be clean, creative, and not reactive. All qualities that will make the situation functional and in support of our field of consciousness, rather than a new, umpteenth, and unaware energy supply paid to the opponent. The resurfacing of the deep mind is another discipline of great power, because it acts on a side of the surface mind that the opponent knows and uses to control to its own benefit and with the minimum effort the disempowering spiral, the mechanical interpretation of perceptions. Bringing our attention to the apparently uncontrolled chaos of the surface mind, we will find that almost all the thoughts that we allow ourselves to keep are strangely focused on only one main polarity. Everything that enters our field of consciousness, including ourselves, is judged, that is to say, broken down into separate and disconnected parts, and then labeled guilty or innocent, inappropriate or suitable, unworthy or worthy, possible or not possible, good or bad, etc., etc., by a mechanism that we now know very well. This huge noise prevents us from feeling and accessing within ourselves to a larger amount of information, which includes connective and unifying aspects that are underlying of everything. These aspects cannot be achieved by the surface mind because it has not this function. These aspects are exclusive relevance of the deep mind. Allowing the resurface of the deep mind basically means introducing a wedge of detachment between us and thoughts in the surface mind, because these thoughts are of little importance and they are not who we really are. In this space, created by detachment, we deliberately leave intervening the deep mind through its failings, and instead of accepting fully and immediately thoughts of judgment generated by the surface mind, either positive or negative, we stay in listening, careful and conscious, to the sensations in the deep mind emanating from deepness within us. The chance for the practice of resurfacing of the deep mind is practically our whole existence. Observe a tree, a plant, or an object. Interact with another human being. Detach ourselves by the surface mind and its nonsense that do not belong to us. What do we perceive? Which feeling is the object or being with whom we interact emanating? And the place we are in? What do we really feel? Is there harmony? Or is something wrong? The resurfacing of the deep mind will allow us to almost immediately realize that everything is much, much more than what the surface mind can judge and that the sum of judgmental and conviction thoughts that we let without rein in us are not even a shadow of that unquestionable reality we believed they were. But the most important element in this conscious resurfacing is the achievement that if the surface mind is interpreting a new perception on the basis of all similar experiences, or is preventing a positive action for our growth with doubts and fears, or is causing an action due to an emotional addiction, thoughts that it uses to dissuade us or to achieve its purposes are not who we are. This is the milestone we have to realize. The fulcrum of our perception is in the deepness of ourselves, in a place where thoughts are not yet become words, but we do never give it the space and silence to manifest itself. Or rather, the opponent does not allow this to happen, because this would lead to see that our life is not in our hands, that is to say, in the deliberate manifestation of the sensations perceived from the deep mind, but in the hands of the opponent's forces, in the inner illusion of our personal freedom. Therefore, the discipline of not expressing negative emotions and the resurfacing of the deep mind create a new inner space, a space of listening and observation. This new space that we will gain with our discipline is a whole space, totally ours, where the opponent cannot survive, nor can intervene to use it to its advantage. The bigger, deeper this space becomes, the more energy we take back by the gravitational field of the opponent, and more majestic and free becomes our existence.